So in this next part, Dr. Richard Wolff addresses more or less what he views as the development of capitalism from history, from slavery to the feudal system, etc, etc. What he doesn't touch upon is the fact that the capitalist system was based on meritocracy, and even when you go back to ancient Greece, to the likes of Aristotle, Socrates, Plato, you had those who had more collectivist views to those who are more individualistic. This is the issue, because capitalism, as I stated before, is an individualist system, and the development of capitalism stems from the meritocracy. So rewarding based on merit. Systems such as the Roman Empire, going through to the feudal systems, these were all inherently collectivist. So let's get down to Dr. Richard Wolff's argument first, and then I'll address the other issues.
Marxists take a particular view of history called historical materialism. How does the current area of capitalism fit into the long history? I think you've mentioned this before, just how this is just the latest chapter in a long history of economic development.
The basic idea is that every economic system has in it conflicting forces. The language in Marxism is internal contradictions. The system has in it problems it is constantly struggling with because they're built into the system, and for long periods of time it finds solutions. But in the end, historical materialism says, the internal contradictions become unmanageable, and then there's a kind of explosion, the system dies, and a new one is born. So we had slavery, for example, in various parts of the world. It was born, it evolved, it had its contradictions. For example, the contradiction that the only way a slave system can continue is if you replace the slaves that reach old age and die, and that's become a big problem for many slave societies. And so eventually, the slavery couldn't solve its problems, and it died, replaced by feudalism in Europe, which went through the parallel process, and then it blew up. It couldn't solve its problems. So historical materialism begins to look at capitalism through the same lens. What are the internal contradictions? How do they bedevil the system? What solutions for a while have they found? But when and where might we get to a level of internal contradiction that makes the system tremble, makes it vulnerable, and at that point, if revolutionaries can see and understand what's going on, they can intervene to move to the next system, to get beyond this. Just like rebels overthrew slavery, rebels overthrew feudalism, the expectation of Marx was that capitalism would generate the contradictions, then the tensions, then the failed solutions that would then bring into being the rebels with the ideas of criticism, Marx himself being one of those, who would eventually move to the next system. To illustrate it as concretely as I can, let me give you an example of the kind of contradiction Marx found in capitalism that has been crucial for everybody else. And I pick it because it's so relevant right now in the United States and around the world. Every capitalist, I think most of the folks watching know this just from their personal life. Every capitalist is always trying to either make more money or survive competitively by saving on his labor costs. One capitalist does it by substituting machines for working people, automating, getting a computer to do what he used to have 50 people do, etc., etc. Another capitalist does it by trying to get cheaper workers in place of more expensive ones, hiring women, if they're less expensive, to do the job that they used to pay men more for, hiring immigrants rather than native folks, moving to another part of the world where wages are much lower. We all know that. So capitalists are always trying to save on labor costs because they can make a better profit if they do that. But here comes the contradiction. If all capitalists are reducing the number of workers they pay or reducing the pay they give to their workers, what will result is that the working people have less and less money. And if they have less and less money, they can't buy what the capitalists are producing to sell. The capitalists, therefore, are destroying themselves, but they have no choice. They have to save on the labor outlay, and then that comes back and bites them in the rear end because there's no demand. If you've been so successful becoming rich as a capitalist, you've killed yourself. These kinds of contradictions, for Marx, are the beginning of the end of a system.
It may sound reasonable to talk about the systematic problem in the United States today, but there lies the problem. This is largely to blame on the corporatist system because of the mixed economy, not because of capitalism. It's the fallacious attempt to ignore the fact corporatism is not capitalism. If one were to compare employment opportunity in a free market system under capitalism to that of the current day corporatist system, they would notice a massive difference. Competition is fierce in a free market economy. As a result of the corporatist system, there is a lack of opportunity. Therefore, many businesses have the luxury to simply replace current workers with new employees due to the very high demand to a shortage of work placements. Therefore, there is less competition of businesses but more competition over finding employment, as countless people are chasing the same jobs. These businesses therefore know they can easily replace the current workers with new employees due to the high demand. It is also important to note that reputation in a free market becomes ever more important because they don't have the government to save them and protect them from their losses. A capitalist system means paying for your own losses. Therefore, a business that harms their reputation in a free market are not going to do themselves any favour when up against fierce competition. For what one business will not provide, another business will. The reason business reputation becomes ever more important is because their business faces risk of loss, resulting in the eventual closure of their business. Sure, exploitation will always exist, and certain businesses will try and get away with it. You will never eradicate exploitation or corruption from the economy 100%, as it's unrealistic to believe otherwise. But at least in a free market, the people have strong choice to better their life and better their wages. The same cannot be said for the corporatist system, and even then the history of socialism has proven so disastrous one would need to remain in a state of ignorance to suggest socialism isn't exploitative, as working for 0% wage is of itself the definition of exploitation. The problem with this argument is that the only way to become a successful entrepreneur within a capitalist system is by not only upholding your business reputation but providing a service customers benefit from. How you treat your workers passes off onto the success of your business. Treat the workers like dirt, your business will perform poorly, whereas if you treat your workers with respect, it will maximise their profits. All thanks to socialism having forced tax rates up to finance the higher inflation caused yet again by socialism. It has left people demanding an even greater pay increase through the failed minimum wage policy. The truth is, a capitalist system not only results in a low inflationary based economy, meaning that society as a whole can get by easier, the higher productivity levels through manufacturing in a capitalist system, exporting goods through free trade results in a stronger purchasing power and monetary value through real money, not the fake counterfeit paper we are forced with. This leads to a wealthier society as a whole. It is for this reason blaming capitalism for the fractional reserve banking that resulted in high inflation, as well as the higher tax rates that resulted in less money in people's pockets, is an erroneous argument.